Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge of the Brawler Cafe. So we are now going to dive into some analysis of Bakugan Resurgence Bakugan. We're going to be talking one-on-one about some Aurelus Bakugan in each of these videos. Today we're going to be covering Aurelus Dragonoid Ultra. Next video we're going to be covering Aurelus Hyper Trox. Aurelus Trox, not Hyper. Zevo is a Hyper, but whatever. And then we're going to be covering each of the factions individually, talk about the best things that they got. So, what makes this guy good? So, first off, his base form, pretty good. 504, Magic Shield, Flaming Fist, good 500B base, may even better with the Magic Shield. Now, of course, you might say, hey, aren't there a lot of problems with Dragonoid Ultras not standing correctly and not keeping their cores, just eating their cores off? Well, the thing is, that seems to just be a defect that isn't consistent, and there are Dragonoid Ultras that don't eat their cores. So, hopefully, eventually this is fixed, and we can all contact customer service to exchange for proper Dragonoid Ultras that do not eat their cores. And because it seems to just be a defect, I'm not going to be accounting for that eating in this video, since, as I said, I've heard multiple accounts that there are Aurelus Dragonoid Ultras that do not eat their cores, and thus it is obviously not a problem in all cases. If Spin Master does not give replacements through customer service, we're going to have a real big scalping issue with people selling properly functioning Aurelus Dragonoid Ultras or Dragonoid Ultras in general for high prices. But you know, hopefully that doesn't come to that. So next up, we have its evolution, Aurelus Titan Dragonoid Ultra. At 4 cost, it goes up to 1200 B power and 10 damage. Very, very high. That's a plus 700 B boost for 4 energy, which is very solid, and plus 6 damage on top of that. And it gains the ability. This counts as all factions. So, the initial reaction to this is, of course, okay, so this makes it really useful in mono decks, because it means you get full benefit from Flooding Waters, you get full benefit from Rite of Darkest, you get full benefit from C, and with C specifically, it hits a 10 damage number specifically, so that it can proxy on its own if all of its damage goes through. So that's pretty good. That makes it really great for mono deck. It would also fit in decently well to shield decks, even though you'd have to go down to 4 shields, or just decks that are involving shields in general, because the strongest shields are the plus 400B ones that only give their bonus to 2 specific factions, which typically does not line up well with the best constructed of decks. However, with Titan Dragonoid Ultra, we can just get the bonus and align that towards factions with our other 2 Bakugan. So that works great there. However, it does not actually stop there, because as it was ruled, anything that says, say, non-Pyrus will not apply to Titan Dragonoid Ultra, because it is also Pyrus. So what this means is that all of the most useful flips, the Outsiders and the keyword flips and all that stuff, all the reliable flips, all the ones that you can be pretty confident that these will be useful against a vast majority of decks, and thus they are worth deck space, unlike the ones that only work against 1 or 2 factions, which are only going to be useful against a third of the decks you fight, or rather a third of the Bakugan you fight, because most teams are going to be composed of Bakugan of 3 different factions. But this is completely immune to those more reliable flips, so it can only be stopped with the 1 or 0 cost flips that are super unreliable. It also has that 10 damage base, and of course, if it is the active Bakugan for the team attack, that effect, that ruling, applies to the entire team attack. So that creates something that is very uninteractive, and the only way you can really interact with it is by using flips that will screw you against decks that aren't carrying this Bakugan. Are you beginning to see the problem here? This becomes worse when you realize, hey, if you just splash this into a normal deck to try and take advantage of this, and okay, so let's assume for a moment that tournament settings are going to be best of 3, because, hey, that's how good competitive tournament settings work, and we have much bigger issues than this card if we aren't doing best of 3. Okay, so in that case, your opponent identifies what flips you're using to stop the stuff, and then goes, okay, if in that case, then I will initiate my team attack with one of my other 2 Bakugan that don't carry that faction. They can even do that within one game if they get a more fortunate situation with you flipping those flips. Or a player could even identify these based on the factions you are running, since there's only one of these flips in each faction. So they could just identify it based on that. And the problem isn't really that this is necessarily a broken Bakugan. It's that it creates an uninteractive game state, and it creates this scenario where, hey, I'm losing because I wasn't using flips that are worse against literally everything else. It doesn't create a very good feeling game state. And because I was curious, I went through all of my drafted archetype decks and went, hey, how many of these could I fit this Bakugan into without it losing focus of what it's supposed to be doing? So to clear that up, that's Shields, Hypertrox build, Reroll Abuse Dan Drago build, a Flaming Fist Good Stuff build, a Hero Base build, a Chaos Titanius build, Mono Aquos, Mono Darkus, Fists, and a Fury deck. 10 different decks. And the only one of those decks that I could not fit this Bakugan into was Aurelus Hypertrox, because all of the factions you get in that deck are very important, and that deck is built around Aurelus Hypertrox. So you obviously need that in your Aurelus slot. And I could fit that in very easily into any of these. And I really hope this was not the actual intent of the designers, because that really calls into question how well this game is actually being designed. Because I don't know about you, but an uninteractive finisher like this is not what I'd like to call good design. It's just not ideal design. Like, there's no way for you to really, like, the only way for you to interact with this is to be carrying cards that are borderline useless against literally any deck that isn't carrying this Bakugan. That isn't good design. So yeah, I'm a bit concerned about this Bakugan. But if that ruling gets amended, and this goes back to just being a good thing for mono decks, then that would be fantastic. I would greatly appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, and because I know someone's going to bring this up, no, for Fists and Shields, it does not create major consistency issues to be running a Bakugan that doesn't carry either one. You can just run them as trap cores. Magic Shield and Flaming Fist decks function just fine with 3 or 4 of their core type. The same can apply to Fists and Shields. You just need a decent clump and maybe have a bit more accurate shooting than you otherwise might need to. And also, if your argument that this Bakugan is fine the way it is that, oh, just don't lose, then I hope you're not running any flips in your deck. You're basically arguing that flips as a whole are useless because, hey, just don't lose. They're just dead draws. Because, like, when you're facing a decently strong Bakugan, you are going to lose sometimes. That's not something that you're going to be able to avoid. And every turn until you defeat your opponent, after your opponent's gotten to this team attack state, every turn that team attack is going to be a threat, and you just can't lose until you've beaten your opponent. So if this isn't a problem, then, you know, I guess flips as a whole are just useless. I guess that's what you're saying. So, you know, food for thought. Food for thought if that's your argument. This is a bit of a problem, Bakugan, but until it's addressed, go ahead, splash it in your decks, because it will just get you some instant wins that your opponent can't really do anything about. And if they start adapting to it by changing their deck build, well, you just initiate your team attack with something that gets past those flips. It's just not great. But with that said, next time we're of course going to be talking about Aurelus Trunks. So with that said, this is Hunter Surge signing off.